Okay, I want to teach you real quick how to do vacuum filtration, which is a really cool technique. It is way faster than just pouring something with precipitate into a funnel with a filter paper and like waiting for gravity over time to separate the precipitate from the liquid. Vacuum filtration takes a fraction of the time, so it's especially good if we have like a large batch of precipitate that we need to get through. So you might recognize this from earlier today when we added the copper 2 chloride and the sodium hydroxide together to make a copper 2 hydroxide precipitate. That's why this is all cloudy. You can see it's separated out a little bit. It's a little bit clearer up top. To do a vacuum filtration, we need what's called a side-armed flask. It's called a side-armed flask. It's a flask with a little side bit on it, to which we attached a rubber tube. The rubber tube is actually going to get attached to the sink side arm over here. We're also going to use a clamp because these guys are not very stable. If I just put it down, you'll see it kind of falls over. You don't want to break this. You don't want to spill your liquid or whatever. So we are going to always clamp this just to kind of keep it secure from falling over. And we're also going to need what's called a Buchner funnel. A Buchner funnel is a funnel that has like a flat bottom like this with a bunch of holes in it. And some filter paper. You can't just assume that this will filter the precipitate. The precipitate's much smaller than these holes, so it'll go through if you don't use a filter paper. So I'm going to put the filter paper in there. If the filter paper doesn't sit flush along the bottom, then you do need to cut your filter paper down to size, because if there is any creases along the side, the precipitate will use that and kind of sneak around the sides and into the sidearm flask, which is not where we want them. So I'm going to put this on here. It should, you don't have to really cram it in there. It'll be fine as long as it's relatively sturdy in there. I'm going to connect this end of the tube to the sink. I'm going to turn the sink on. Essentially, when I'm doing vacuum filtration, I'm going to take advantage of this rushing water and something known as the Bernoulli effect. Essentially, we're going to create a low-pressure system through this tube and down in this flask, which is going to mean that the higher pressure atmosphere is actually going to push the liquid through at a faster rate than it would otherwise, which we'll observe in just a second. Hopefully you can kind of see. I'm going to turn this on. I'm not sure if you can see, but I'm going to put a little bit of water on here to kind of adhere the filter paper to the funnel. You can see the water coming through down here relatively quickly. And then I'm going to start in with my solution that I'd like to filter with my precipitate. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of let this sit a little bit. You can see it coming through relatively slowly. Some things to look for as you're filtering. You want to look at the quality of the filtrate down here, the liquid that's coming out the bottom. If it is cloudy, or if it has this blue color in this case, right, this one's a blue precipitate, but if it's cloudy, that means that some of the precipitate is getting down into here, which means you're not doing a quantitative job of collecting your precipitate, which in gravimetric analysis, which we're going to be doing in this lab, is really important. You need to collect all of the precipitate you make. So if you're getting a cloudy filtrate, you have a couple of options. You can actually stop the experiment, take all of this off, pour this liquid back into here and start again, filter it again. You can actually use heat on any precipitate. Heat actually causes the formation of larger particles, which will mean that they get stuck better in the filter paper. You can use time. If you let your precipitate sit over time, it will get bigger, which will make it get caught in the filter paper more easily. But anyway, as we've talked, it seems like this batch is actually, looks like there's no more water in here. Let's check. Yeah, no more water in here. And it looks pretty, well, actually it looks a little bit cloudy down there. This might not have been a great job. Let's turn this off and check it out. You can see I've collected the blue precipitate up here. It did not take that long, but you can also see that I think I've got a little bit of, blue cloudiness in here. So probably if this were a lab where it was important that I actually mass how much precipitate I made, I'd probably end up pouring this back into here and trying again.